and peace. Amen. When you get evaluations at work or at school, how would you like these kind of sentences to be in your job evaluation, your performance evaluation? Works well under constant supervision, or has delusions of adequacy, or this person would go far, and the sooner the better, or his people would follow him anywhere but only out of a morbid sense of curiosity. Or, since my last report, she has reached rock bottom and continues to dig. Or, when he opens his mouth, it seems that this is the only way to change whichever foot was previously in there. Or, she sets low personal standards and then consistently fails to achieve them. Well, have you ever had one of those kind of job performance reviews that was pretty brutal, that leave you reeling? And don't raise your hands because maybe you have, that's not important, but sometimes job evaluations are pretty brutal at work. Sometimes you get those and you think, oh my goodness, I wish I wouldn't be reviewed, or my performance wouldn't be evaluated that way. But more than that, what if you kind of got a life evaluation? Not so much a job performance review, but a life review where those kinds of things were said. What would people say about you at work, about the way that you treat people? What about a life performance review from your family members, close friends, ex-friends? What about a peer review from those people with whom you work or go to school? What would they say? Would that be maybe brutal to hear? Well, what if instead you were able to receive a life evaluation that went something like, she always treated people like she would like to be treated, or he always treated people like Jesus would, or he just didn't have any enemies? Or what if someone said about you in a life review, I could see Jesus in him? How would you like it said that in everything you did to others as you would like them have done to you? How would you like it being said of you that you fulfill the golden rule in everything that you did? Well, what I'd like to do this morning is talk with you about the biggest hindrance that I think many people have in getting that type of life performance evaluation. I'd like to talk with you about something that I think is very pervasive and insidious and injurious to our health and our well-being. In fact, I've seen more people's personal relational health more ruined by it than anything else, based on some words from Jesus. A tough gospel for us today. A tough gospel. How do you fulfill those words of Jesus? But how do you do what he says? You've heard it said, love your neighbor, hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's what I'd like to talk with you about today. How can Jesus be serious? I mean, how can we love our enemies? How can we pray for those who persecute you? How can Jesus be serious if last Sunday's sermon on sin wasn't bad enough, that blistered the walls in here? Well, I didn't really, but, it was a serious sermon. How can we take this talk about Jesus loving our enemies and praying for those who persecute you seriously? I mean, isn't Jesus going just a tad too far? Well, I think it's because Jesus knows that hating your enemies, being consumed with hatred, and hating your enemies and those who persecute you leads to a pervasive, insidious, injurious internal anxiety that who does it end up hurting? Really, it only ends up hurting you. It hurts you because it leads to your personal, relational health being ruined by more and more than anything else. Because what I've seen in my ministry over the years is that the cause of a sickness of the soul and ill health in personal relationships is the issue of resentment. Simply the issue of resentment. Is there somebody that you resent? Somebody who got a job instead of you did? Somebody who did you wrong. And whenever you remember it, it's like a burning coal that's in your heart that's hard to let go. Maybe it's somebody who gossiped about you, somebody who did something to you, something when, you think about it, it just burns you up, and so you try to avoid it when sometimes you just can't. Sometimes those resentments just grab hold of our hearts, and it's just hard to let them go. And sometimes we think, well, I'm justified in holding on to that resentment because holding on to the pain and resentment of that past will protect me in the future. Sometimes we think, well, if we let go of the resentment, then we're justifying what they did to us. That we're, all of a sudden, if we let go of that it makes what they did okay, and it's not. Friedrich Nietzsche, though, once said that nothing on earth consumes a person more completely than the passion of resentment. Hanging on to it eats you up. Letting go of it doesn't mean that what happened is okay, by no means. But by hanging on to resentments, like I was talking about with the kids, you get consumed, and eventually the more resentments you have, the more and more of your soul will die. I've seen in my ministry that resentments have power over people. And because they have power, resentments that we hold, resentments become a double whammy. First of all, there's the hurt that people do to us, and then the resentment sets in and festers and gains power over us, and so it becomes a double whammy. It's the what happened, and then it's the hold that we let it have over us. Resentments have power over people, and part of my concern is asking, who's in control? Who is in control of your life? Who is in control of the way that I feel? Who is in control of my life, of my heart, of my thoughts? Well, you are. You're in control. If you're feeling anxious, sometimes it's medically difficult to get away from that, and you need some help with that, counseling, whatever it might be. But if you're feeling hatred, anxiety, you're the one who's allowing yourself to be anxious, hateful. If you resent your enemies and those who persecute you, you're allowing yourself to take that justifiable anger that you have and turn it into a resentment, and then it gains power over you. I'd like to suggest to you this morning that you're the only one who can let go of your resentments. You're the only one who controls your emotional health because you're the only one who's responsible for it. You're the only ones who can allow yourself to follow the words of Jesus when he says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Now, if I could suggest a way for you to be free of resentments in 6 weeks, would you do it? If I could suggest a way to be free from the anxiety of resentments that sometimes take hold of our hearts, would you be willing to take certain steps if you knew that it worked? Well, I'm going to suggest that in a moment, but first let me tell you a story. There was once an African tribe who regarded monkeys as monkey meat as a delicacy that they would have for their festive meals. The monkeys, however, were difficult to catch, and they rarely strayed from the safety of the trees, but the people in this African tribe found a solution. With river clay, they made clay jars which were round at the bottom and then narrow at the neck. And the villagers took these clay jars and filled them at the bottom with peanuts, and then set them on the floor of the jungle, where they then went to bed. During the night, the monkeys smelled the peanuts, and they sensed that everything was safe. They came swinging down from the trees to investigate, and one by one, the monkeys reached into the bottles, grabbed a fistful of peanuts, and when the monkeys tried to retrieve the prized peanuts, what they found was that they could not pull their fist out of that bottle. They tried and tried with all their might, and they couldn't pull their fist out of the narrow neck of that heavy bottle. The next morning, the people of the village walked to the clearing in the jungle. They found all of these monkeys still trying to pull their fists from these clay jars, and the villagers scooped up the monkeys and broke the clay jars and carried the monkeys home to provide monkey meat stew for their festive dinner. Very simply put, when you hold on to resentments like the monkeys held on to those peanuts, you become monkey meat stew. Don't become monkey meat stew. There's an alternative. There's a solution. There's a different way. And Jesus, not surprisingly, has a solution in our gospel for today. When he says, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, because those who persecute us, those who have wronged us, those who we hate, those who are our enemies, have more power over us than what Jesus wants them to have. If you'd like to be free from resentment in 6 weeks' time, if you'd like to avoid becoming monkey meat stew, let me suggest something that you do for 10 minutes every morning and also something every evening. Just 10 minutes. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, every day for 6 weeks. And I can almost guarantee you, if you have resentments, that you'll be free from the vice grip that it has over some people's lives. First of all, think of everything that you want for yourself. Your health, your prosperity, your happiness, your success. Think about what it would be like for you to have a perfect life. In terms of your health, your relationships, in terms of what you most want out of life. What would it cause you to have a perfect life? Think of that. Then think of someone that has done you wrong. Someone that you resent the most, someone who has hurt you with what they've done. And then, for that person, pray that they might have everything you want for yourself. Pray for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, their success. Even if you don't mean it at the beginning, try. You have to grit your teeth, even if you have to say, even if your words are not understandable, try. Just saying it, because who is being controlled by a resentment? Well, you are. You're giving up control over your emotions and your feelings to someone else, someone that you don't like, someone that you resent. So pray for them, like Jesus says in our gospel for today. Love your enemies. You can still be ticked off at them, but love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Even if you don't mean it, that's fine. Do it for 6 weeks, every morning, 10 minutes. And eventually you will mean it. And the more you mean it, the more you pray for those who persecute you, the more free you'll be, the less resentful you will become. All it takes is 10 minutes every morning for the next 6 weeks. Second, take out a notebook, a folder, whatever it might be, begin a gratitude journal. Every evening for the next 6 weeks, just write down 4 to 6 specific things that you were grateful for that happened during that day. Maybe even write down, had a great taco at noon today. Maybe write down, the dog didn't mess in the house last night. Whatever it might be, a conversation that you had with your son or a daughter, the parking place was open for you. Write down some of the things that you're grateful for. 4 to 6 simple things every evening, even 10 minutes. Write it in a gratitude journal. Following the service today, the ushers will hand you one of these. It's a don't become monkey meat stew with a little peanut that was very hot glued on there, very technically. So hopefully it won't fall out. If you'd like to, you can crack them and eat the peanut and still have it in there. But it's just a way of having on a piece of paper exactly what I've been talking about, listing what you want for yourself, thinking of a person, a place, or a thing, something that you resent the most, and then praying for that person, that place, that thing, whatever it might be that you resent the most, to have things that you want for yourself. And then in the evening, write down a gratitude journal. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes of the evening in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, your feelings of resentment, if you have those, will diminish. Your feelings of gratitude will grow. You'll understand a little bit more of what in the world Jesus was talking about when he says, you've heard about that it was said, but I say to you, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. It works. I've seen it. I've seen it work. And my prayer is that we would be children of God, full of love, free of resentments, and healthy in mind by